John, in the ragged old flag, you mentioned that our government was scandalized. Was that a reference to the Nixon resignation?
I think I think that'll fit almost any time. There's certain scandals going on all the time in the government, like there is in every other bureaucratic organization.
I recall being at the White House with you in 1970,
Mm-hmm.
and President Nixon was in the White House at the time, and the Vietnam War was on at the time.
Yep.
And it was very controversial. And I recall you're saying, if you don't want to stand behind the president, then get the hell over so I can.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that in mind, were you later disappointed with President Nixon because of Watergate and the things that subsequently happened to him?
Yeah, I think everybody was, but that's all it was, a disappointment. He was still a president of the United States. He was elected by the people, and that's one of those rights we got, like flag burning. We elect our president, and I think it's the obligation of all of us to try to support him so long as we think he's doing the right thing. At that particular time, I wasn't talking about the Vietnam War especially. I think the reporters were, but I was in his home, John Carter was asleep upstairs in the Lincoln bedroom, and I'm not about to insult the host while I'm in his house. And he had been very kind to me. I'd even already turned down a request to do 2 songs that he had asked me to do, or he had sent word, somebody in his organization had sent a request for me to do Welfare, Cadillac, and Okie from Muskogee, and I sent word that I already had my program planned, and I didn't know those songs, so I wasn't going to do them. I didn't think I should really antagonize the President of the United States by making a remark about him, an adverse remark about him in his own home. But I was not making that as a statement of support for the Vietnam War. I had been to Vietnam, and I just told you a while ago where my heart lies with our men in Vietnam. President Nixon made mistakes. They all make mistakes, but his was highly publicized and for a great deal of it blown out of proportion, but it was a bad thing that happened. And I'm not trying to justify Richard Nixon. I think history will take care of that. But at the time I made that statement of support for the president, yes, I did support the president and his decisions. He didn't get us in that war in the first place, and I don't know if he got us out of it as fast as he could have or not. I don't think so, but I would like to have hoped he was trying at the time,
I gather from what you say, you did not support the Vietnam War.
Well, that's really a strange way to put it. I supported our servicemen. I supported the Americans that had to go. June and I did so much in that we went and did 4 or 5 shows a day in Vietnam.
Let me rephrase it then. Support our reasons for being there.
Why were we there, Ralph? I don't know. We're communists taking over another little country. We got to stop this. I don't know that we got to stop this. I don't know anything. I don't know anything about the government in those countries, and South America, Central America, and I don't know how much meddling in other people's affairs we need to do, to learn our lesson. I'm not saying live and let live. Let a terrible regime overthrow a good government and kill all the good people. I'm not saying that, but I still don't know why we're in Vietnam. I only know that our boys went, so I supported.
John, I want to ask you about a man named Glenn Shirley. Glenn Shirley was a man in prison that you helped to get a release for. And he allegedly wrote a song called Greystone Chapel.
Yeah, he did.
This was when?
1968.
Now, subsequently, I have heard that he did not write Greystone Chapel, and there was some kind of mix-up, and the wrong man got out.
No, that's not true. Glenn Shirley did write Greystone Chapel, and that's not what got him out of prison. He served his time. I think he did 14 years that stretch in Folsom. I got his song the night before the show. Reverend Floyd Gressett in Ventura, California, brought me the song. He said, this convict wrote this song. I had a lot to do working on the show for the next day, but I said, well, something about it. I thought I'd better listen. I listened to it and learned it that night, and then sprang it on him in the show the next day.
Was this in the Folsom album?
Yeah. And Glenn Shirley was sitting right on the front row with the other convicts.
Did you have Dr. Graham intercede in his behalf?
No, he wrote a letter. He was one of many people who wrote a letter.
To Ronald Reagan?
Yeah.
Was he covenant that
right.
time?
Yes.
To get Glenn Shirley out?
Right.
And then you took Glenn Shirley under your wing when he came out?
Yep, as best I could.
Was he paroled to you?
No, No, that was not a condition of his parole that he be under my wing. No, he was a free man. He came back to Nashville and he hung around. He worked at House of Cash on the songs. He wrote a lot of songs. He wrote a song Eddie Arnold had a really nice record on called Portrait of My Woman. So Greystone Chapel is not the only thing he wrote. But he was a legitimate songwriter. He was a good one, too. And he was a good man. It was just unfortunate that, you see, he spent over half his life behind bars from the time he was a kid. And he just could never cope.
John, that story of your helping Glenn Shirley get his release must have created a situation whereby other convicts or inmates wrote to you and asked if you could help them get out.
Yeah. Get a lot of mail from wives and mothers, more than from convicts, with pages and pages of documents detailing their history and how they were wrong, how they were innocent and they should not be in there. And I try not to get involved in that because one thing, the penal authorities in the different states and in the federal pens, they don't want anybody in a position of so-called influence to try to use their influence or their name or their pull to try to get anybody out of prison. And that'll turn them off of you quicker than anything else in the world. For somebody to say Johnny Cash is going to write a letter for me, in most cases it'll hurt more than it would help.
John, I want to ask you about a man named Glenn Shirley. Glenn Shirley was a man in prison that you helped to get a release for. And he allegedly wrote a song called Greystone Chapel.
Yeah, he did.
This was when?
1968.
Now, subsequently, I have heard that he did not write Greystone Chapel, and there was some kind of mix-up, and the wrong man got out.
No, that's not true. Glenn Shirley did write Greystone Chapel, and that's not what got him out of prison. He served his time. I think he did 14 years that stretch in Folsom. I got his song the night before the show. Reverend Floyd Gressett in Ventura, California, brought me the song. He said, this convict wrote this song. I had a lot to do working on the show for the next day, but I said, well, something about it. I thought I'd better listen. I listened to it and learned it that night, and then sprang it on him in the show the next day.
Was this in the Folsom album?
Yeah. And Glenn Shirley was sitting right on the front row with the other convicts.
Did you have Dr. Graham intercede in his behalf?
No, he wrote a letter. He was one of many people who wrote a letter.
To Ronald Reagan?
Yeah.
Was he covenant that
right.
time?
Yes.
To get Glenn Shirley out?
Right.
And then you took Glenn Shirley under your wing when he came out?
Yep, as best I could.
Was he paroled to you?
No, 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 that was not a condition of his parole that he be under my wing. No, he was a free man. He came back to Nashville and he hung around. He worked at House of Cash on the songs. He wrote a lot of songs. He wrote a song Eddie Arnold had a really nice record on called Portrait of My Woman. So Greystone Chapel is not the only thing he wrote. But he was a legitimate songwriter. He was a good one, too. And he was a good man. It was just unfortunate that, you see, he spent over half his life behind bars from the time he was a kid. And he just could never cope.
John, that story of your helping Glenn Shirley get his release must have created a situation whereby other convicts or inmates wrote to you and asked if you could help them get out.
Yeah. Get a lot of mail from wives and mothers, more than from convicts, with pages and pages of documents detailing their history and how they were wrong, you know, how they were innocent and they should not be in there. And I try not to get involved in that because one thing, the penal authorities in the different states and in the federal pens, they don't want anybody in a position of so-called influence to try to use their influence or their name or their pull to try to get anybody out of prison. And that'll turn them off of you quicker than anything else in the world for somebody to say, Johnny Cash is going to write a letter for me, you know? In most cases, it'll hurt more than it would help.
Merle Haggard, in an interview I did with him recently, said that today it would be too dangerous for an entertainer to go inside a prison and entertain as you did in the albums Folsom and the one at San Quentin. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it was dangerous when I did it. They were right at the point of doing something at San Quentin. At the end of San Quentin the first time, the applause did not die, and I'd sing it again. It's on the album twice. And at the end of that one, they got up on the tables, jumping up and down, and the guards were just like against the wall. You know, they didn't know what's going to happen. And I really believe if I had gotten on that microphone and urged it, something bad could have happened. But I brought them back down finally. But they circulated backstage, you know, dozens of them, and I got to know a lot of them, wrote to them, heard from them. I never felt in danger, but if they had wanted to grab some hostages or cause some trouble, I guess they could have.
The song "A Boy Named Sue," which is on the Folsom Prison album.
San Quentin album.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I understand that you had never heard this song until the day you did it.
Well, no, I heard it at my house. Shel Silverstein was at my house and sang it for me or talked it for me. At a dinner we had one night that one night, Chris Christopherson at my house sang Me and Bobby McGee. Bob Dylan sang Lay Lady Lay. Shel Silverstein sang Boy Named Sue.
Were these all songs that had not been released yet?
Right. And Joni Mitchell sang Both Sides Now.
All these songs were brand new?
Brand new, yeah, every one of them. And so I liked... I got Shel to write me out the words to A Boy Named Sue, and we were leaving the next day to go to California, where I was going to do the San Quentin album. And the next morning, June said, be sure and take the lyrics to A Boy Named Sue. You should do that on the show. And I said, I don't have time to learn it. And she said, take them anyway. So I did. I had them in my briefcase. On the way to San Quentin Prison, I pulled them out, and I said, I don't have time to learn this. I can't do it. But I got on stage. I had the words in my pocket, and there's something about the song that really kept gnawing at me. You know, this is really special. It's something that I ought to do. So I had a music stand there, and I pulled the words out of my pocket and set them on the music stand and sat down with my guitar. And Marshall and Bob Wooten and W.S. Holland and Carl Perkins were the band. And so I just started reading it off, singing it. and the reaction started. And that was the record. That's the one and only time I've ever recorded it, when I was reading it off the paper.
And the reaction was so great that CBS had to release it as a single.
Mm-hmm.
That was one take.
Yeah, right. That was
amazing.
One take. Mm-hmm.
Now, Folsom has been a hit for you twice, hasn't it?
Yeah, right. 55 and 68.
You've never been in prison, have you?
No.
Why
I've never been convicted of a felony. I never served any hard time.
Why did you write a song about Folsom Prison?
It's most songs are fantasies, and I saw a movie called Inside the Walls of Folsom Prison when I was in the Air Force, and wrote the song when I was in the Air Force in 1953.
It was a hit for you in 55,
Mm-hmm.
and then around 68 you did the live album at Folsom, and it was a hit all over again.
Yeah.
Is it difficult to arrange with prison authorities to go into a prison like Folsom or San Quentin and do a show?
I really don't know how difficult. I know it was difficult, but I don't know how difficult. Bob Johnston produced the album and handled all the arrangements with the help of Robert Hilburn in Los Angeles and Preacher Gressett in Ventura and his brother Jess Gressett. A lot of people helped arrange that concert. I took my daddy out there, and it was an event. But I don't know how much trouble it took to set it up, but it was a lot of trouble, yeah.
John, tell me about I Walk the Line.
I Walk the Line is a song I wrote one night in Gladewater, Texas, and I'd had the melody and those chord changes in my mind since I was in the Air Force. And I was talking to Carl Perkins, and I said, I got this idea for a song called Because You're Mine. And I started singing it. And then he said, I Walk the Line would probably be a better title. So I called it I Walk the Line. I wrote it that night in Gladewater, Texas. But I'd had an old tape recorder when I was in the Air Force, and somebody had sat down with a guitar and turned on my tape recorder and run these chord changes. And then when I played that back, it went to all those strange chord changes, like I made on the record. I never could get it out of my mind, so that's the arrangement I used on the record. But I wrote the song in Gladewater, Texas.
What does the term I Walk the Line mean to you?
It means I'm staying true to you, baby, because I love you.
Okay, I walk a narrow path,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. John, you've had a magnificent career. What would you say are the top 4 or 5 Johnny Cash songs? The songs that people still react to when you sing on stage?
Ring of Fire, Folsom Prison Blues, Sunday Morning Coming Down, Orange Blossom Special, Boy Named Sue, I Still Miss Someone.
How did you get the song Sunday Morning Coming Down?
Chris Christopherson had been giving me song tapes. He worked as a janitor at CBS Studio, and I wouldn't listen to his tapes. He'd given them to June because they told him if he bothered me, they'd fire him, and he needed a job at the time. So one Sunday afternoon, he landed in my yard in an Army National Guard helicopter and brought that tape, Sunday Morning Coming Down. So I invited him in. I said, this guy got to be something special to believe in himself that much. So I listened to the song, and he was right. It was right for me.
But he had never pitched you a song down at CBS?
Not personally. He'd tell me about him if he got a chance, and then he'd give the tape to June. And she'd always give them to me, and I'd throw them in the lake.
Why?
Well, I was getting thousands of tapes, and I just didn't listen to them all.
Well, I
I
suppose
was trying to do a TV show every week,
The Johnny Cash television show on CBS television?
No, in ABC.
ABC television. Ran for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a problem between you and the producers as to content, particularly as to who would be booked?
Not after we got started. All that was worked out before we started. I told them I wanted people from every walk of musical life, and people that hadn't been on television, like some of the rock groups, they were on my TV show. The Who, Bob Dylan, Pete Seeger even. I knew Pete as a as a folk singer, banjo player. I liked his songs, and I just wanted to be comfortable with the people I worked with. I started naming my favorite people, like Sister Rosetta Tharpe, a black gospel singer, plus all my country music friends I wanted on the show. And there was never a problem over guests after we started, no.
Because I had, in your book, The Man in Black, I gathered that there was some pressure from New York to use certain people that you didn't want to use.
Well, they got to where they wanted to book anybody that had a name that might mean something for ratings, whether they had talent or whether I could relate to them or not. And I'm not going to name people's names, but there were people came in from Hollywood that I was uncomfortable working with, but the network wanted because of their ratings, And I thought that was silly to do that to, or not only silly, but cruel to do that to an artist and his work, to put somebody there to work with him that he could not relate to, had no chemistry with, had no feel for what they did. I like to sing with all my guests when I had them on. Glenn Campbell probably did my show more than anybody else, and I respected him so much, still do, as an entertainer and musician. And so I kept, every time they'd mention somebody that was really far out left field, like some actress or something, I'd say, how about Glenn Campbell? I'd bring him right back down to earth every chance I got. Or how about Merle Travis?
John, the book Man in Black is copyrighted, this is it, is copyrighted 1975.
Mm-hmm.
That was almost 15 years ago. You think there will ever be a sequel to this book?
I thought I'd told it all. Maybe so.
The last 15 years.
I've got 2 or 3 offers to do that very thing if I ever feel like writing that much about me again. It's a very painful thing to do.
Why?
Well, life's full of pain, and I'd say that most of the things about me that's made the news in the last 15 years have been fairly painful things. A lot of them have, anyway. And I don't care to write about drugs. I don't care to write about other troubles I've had or the other.
But you did so in this book.
Yeah, I know. I thought I was cleaning the slate there, but then life continues after the book is published. And more has happened to me since that book was published than before, all put together. I might write it sometime, but a different angle than Man in Black. I don't think I would do a kind of self-unfoldment kind of a thing like I did in that book. I don't think, to me, I'm not all that interesting. I don't want to, Ralph.
Okay. I know you have since written a book called Man in White, which is about the Apostle Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Your religion means a great deal to you, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, now, the Apostle Paul inspires me. There's a man who set out to conquer the world in the name of Jesus Christ and did it. Took the sect of the Nazarene, the Christians, to the whole Gentile world. And he was, to begin with, he was a man of the law, a very devout Orthodox Jew, and very zealous for the law, as it says, and so much to the point that he saw the sect of the religion of Jesus Christ as a vile sect of the Jews that desecrated Judaism, and he set out to destroy it. On the way to Damascus, after he had just about wiped the church out in Jerusalem, had gone undercover, he had a startling vision on the road to Damascus where Jesus Christ appeared to him in his glorified form, so much that it blinded him with the light and told him that he had been called to be the chief apostle. And he took that calling very seriously and set out to tell the world about it, which he did over and over. And I admire the man. You know, I had a couple of little Damascus Road experiences in my life, you know, not like he did. I never have seen the Lord or heard the voice, but like he did. But I had to turn around a few times, and I can relate to him. And it's because he inspired me so that I wanted to write about him and study about him and read about him, which I did for years before I wrote Man in White.
Can you tell us about your road to Damascus?
Well, I didn't have an experience that lasted 2 minutes like he did that turned my whole life around. It took me days and weeks and years to turn my life around, and I'm still, from time to time, have to go back and turn it back around a little bit more because it keeps slipping back to the old ways. Not like Paul. He never did revert to his old ways, but my nature is so carnal. I guess I kind of, from time to time, try to revert to the old ways, and it's death and destruction, and I can't do it. So I have my little Damascus Road experiences every time I'm spiritually strong enough to do it. And writing the Man in White was one of them.
John, you told me also about a man at Jimmy Snow's church pitching you a song in a very inappropriate place. Apparently, there was a call to come down to the front and pray.
Yeah,
this man was a visitor?
Oh, there was an altar call. And I walked down and stood with all the other church members, you know. We were praying and singing. Really, really feeling good, inspired, you know, uplifted. This guy walks up with his tape right beside me in church. I want you to hear this song. I think that is the biggest violation of my privacy I've ever had.
What did you tell him? I mean, at the moment, people, it's a very moving moment in the church, very emotional moment. So how did you settle him down?
I just said, I'll talk to you after church, outside, not inside.
Did he buy that?
Yeah, he finally did. He stood there, but I wouldn't take the tape from him in church, you know.
Did he say, John, I have a song for you?
Yeah. Yeah, he did. A hit for me.
Did you ever hear the tape?
I don't think so. I was, after I got out and got the tape from him, I think I threw it away somewhere. I felt violated, you know. Now, that kind of intrusion on my privacy I resent, but I don't have a lot of that. I don't go to church enough.
John, how long have you and June been married?
21 years.
Did you get married a week after you recorded the song Jackson?
No. We got married a long time after we recorded Jackson. We recorded Jackson in 65, I believe. We got married in 68. We married 3 years after we recorded Jackson.
Okay. That was another big song in your career.
Yeah.
I was at that session that night.
Yeah, you were.
A lot of chemistry that night.
Yeah. Yeah, that's still a good song for us to do. We still do it on stage.
John, one of my favorite stories about you, which I think emphasizes your international reputation, was the crossing of the border from behind the Iron Curtain. I think maybe from Czechoslovakia.
Yeah. Czechoslovakia into Germany. Lou Robin and a couple of the guys went into we were all on the bus, June and I and John Carter and the Carter family and the band, and we stopped at the border coming out of Czechoslovakia. And we'd done 2 days of shows in Prague, and 12,000 people twice a day. We had 48,000 people at our shows in Prague. And coming out, the Red Guard and the KBG run the border, you know, at customs going through. And they came on board the bus and took all the passports inside to check them out. And we waited and waited, and after about 30 minutes, Lou Robin came back out and said they wanted me inside. Well, June and I got up and went inside. And they were all standing around looking at me as I walked in. Nothing was going on. They were just standing staring at me, all the KGB and the Red Guard. And I asked Lou, I said, what do they want? What's wrong? And he said, I don't know. They just want you to come in. So he went over to the one who spoke English at the desk, and he said, and he asked him what they wanted. And he came back over to me, and I said, what do they want? And he said, they want you to sing. I said, all right. I thought we were going to be held up in Czechoslovakia for a few years, you know. So said, tell Bob Wooten to get his guitar off the bus and tell the girls to come on in. So we got against one wall with one guitar and sang about 5 or 6 songs. And at the end of this, a very stern face, at the end of every song there. And then after about 5 songs, I told Lou, I said, that's all we can do with just one guitar, and we're tired, we're traveling, do we have to sing anymore? So he asked the boss in the place if we could go, and he said, yes, tell Mr. Cash, thank you very much for the concert, and he has permission to leave. So we went on through.
Now, meantime, while you're singing, aren't they backing traffic up for miles?
As far as you could see over the hills behind us, miles and miles, the cars and buses and trucks were backed up and waiting while our bus stood right there while we gave a mini concert to the KBG and the Red Guard.
John, I thank you. I appreciate your coming and sitting and talking with us.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm sorry it took so long to get here. I had to cancel a couple of times, but I kept putting you on the back burner, but I kept you burning because I knew I wanted to talk to you, and
right.
I appreciate the conversation.